Good evening. This is the March 13, 2013 meeting of the Finance Committee. It's 7 o'clock, starting on time tonight. Our agenda for this evening, called to order at 7, where we have one transfer tonight, and then we'll be continuing our look at fiscal 14 budgets, including Veteran Services, Town Clerk and Elections, the Department of Development and Special Services Divisions, several of those, the Finance Department and their divisions, and then we'll adjourn. We're going to make some changes to our agenda for next week. We'll talk about that a little later. So first up, we have a transfer request. This is from the Veterans. Excuse me. This is a transfer from the reserve account to relief and medical. Amount requested, $15,000. The present balance in the account is $2,369.86. The reason for the shortage is amount estimate to pay current obligation through April 2013. The department head on this, Larry Corbin. Larry, could you come on up, please? Nice to see you tonight, sir.
It's always nice to see you folks.
Regarding this transfer, the obligation through April only, I guess my question is, can you estimate out through the rest of the fiscal year, or is it premature to do that?
Yes. Going back, I grabbed this January, February, March rate. In January, we had $3,400 for the month. In February, we had $4,900 for the month. And now in March, I have $6,834 for the month. If 3 of the cases that I now carry get their VA awards, they will fall off of the payroll, and that will be $1,245, $1,455, and if the other guy gets employed, it'll be $1,669, for a total of $4,664, which will come off at any time. That can come off at any time. However, it can also stay if the VA doesn't do that, and us being currently at $6,834, if I was to pick up another vet, we'd have to come back for more money. So when I was talking with Ed, go ahead, Ed.
Yeah, if I may, and Larry and I talked about the strategy behind this transfer. Right now, to get us through June 30th, at current liability, we'd need $29,000 to $30,000. So we figured we'd ask for half now, an incremental piece, only because some individuals may fall off and that liability may go down. So right now, if those individuals were to stay on, we would need another $30,000. I said, let's do a transfer enough to get us through 2 months.
Yes.
We'll re-examine that, and we'll come back and either do a monthly transfer for May. I think that makes the most sense, but I think the committee needs to know that that liability potentially is out there for substantially more than the $15,000 that we're asking for currently.
Okay, and that strategy does make sense to me, Larry. I know you're in for your budget also tonight, so good to see you. And not that you need to come up if we have to do subsequent transfers. Feel free to come on up, but if we have to, at least we know, you know, what's behind going on here.
Yes, I'd like to, and I want, I keep Ed informed and the rest of these approvals, these 3 that I'm in particular, are only approved for 3 months at a time for us. Every 3 months, I have to resubmit to Boston, to the federal side, to DBS, and as long as they continue on the path that they're on, it's kind of an automatic, like March, this will run out. I'll resubmit for 3 more months, April, May, and June. If they're still on the payroll currently, those numbers should stay the same, barring another veteran, widow, or whatever coming in and needing assistance. So,
Okay.
that's what.
And we understand the importance of this. There's no question on that. I know Kim had a
Yeah, I just have a
related
couple
question.
questions,
Sure.
because I don't know that much about this department, the way this works.
It's a secret.
So if you said in January, you had $3,400, is that what you
Yes,
said?
ma'am.
How many people are covered by this benefit?
Any veteran in the town of Auburn that comes and needs assistance, it's based on a formula used by Department of Veteran Services, the federal government. I'd take an intake, and it's based on liability, medical need, income, no income, that kind of thing. Obviously, the more income you have, and not everybody gets the benefit, because if you're like over $1,800 or $1,500 to $1,800 a month income, you're not entitled. Okay, it's a relief versus support thing. If you are unemployed, there are certain things that you have to go through, okay? But mostly, when we look at the list, it's widows which stay permanently on, and those are in the average of a couple $100 a month, okay? Our big costs are the veterans coming back. I have 2 for PTSD under evaluation out of Afghanistan. One's in the VA hospital in Leeds. Should get a readout on them soon. And the dependent with children, wife, 3 kids, 2 kids. Everything adds up, and it's based on a certain formula when I do the data input into the... I'd be glad to, anybody ever wanted to see, I would be glad to show you how I do the intake. It's secret. But I'll show you.
So you recently had additional people?
I just picked up this month a $1,934 ad for the
Per
month
month.
of March. Okay, and we pay twice a month, so they get half every 2 weeks. And last month we had $4,900, so it went up.
So is the amount they receive, it fluctuates from person to person based on their needs?
Yes, ma'am, it's fixed. Yeah, it's based on, there's 5 budgets, all the way from single, okay, to married, married without a spouse, married with spouse, dependents, children, and medical. Okay, and what happens is they get an ordinary benefit, a fuel benefit, and a miscellaneous benefit. And the miscellaneous benefit is usually the cost of medical insurance, okay, for the widows and that kind of thing. And that averages, well, Social Security is 104, some people, 104.90 a month, and some of it is 137.48 for a retirement fund person for us. So the budgets can range from $163 a month to $1934. That's where that's exactly how it flows.
So have you seen you've been doing this for several years.
Yes, ma'am.
It looks to me like we're seeing, since 2010, a dramatic increase. Is that because of the increase in the number of people requesting benefits?
Yes. The damages to the troops, to the troops coming back.
Is that mostly attributable to the most recent wars, or is it other veterans that are just
Well, the 2 highest ones right now are the most recent war. Okay? The other one is an unemployment issue for a veteran with a wife and 3 children. So that adds $300 a kid. I don't mean to say kid, I mean a child, basically. So the more dependency that you have, all right, and that's still not enough. At $1,964, $1,996 a month, that's not enough to pay your rent and all that other stuff. But the formula limits the ability. Like if your mortgage is $1,500 a month, I can't pay you more than $500, $600.
Right.
See what I'm saying? I can help offset.
No, I'm not critical.
Yeah.
I just want to understand how this works. Now, the town gets reimbursed by the state?
75% from the federal government on the anniversary date of the year it's incurred.
Okay, so after
Next year.
June 30th, we'll get 75% of whatever's expended?
6834, we would get 75% back if there were no denials. Now, I run into denials sometime based on certain factors, okay? And when I do that, I have to offset, I have to make the sheet balance, so I either limit them on the next check or I make them pay it back, which I really have only done once on a settlement that a guy got. I made him pay us back $5,400. He got 80 grand, give me 5,000, come on. We would, we supported you. So it's a constant monthly fluctuation
Okay.
and if Boston denies something, the issue can be that, like, if I put the money in for X amount of dollars and they don't approve it for 3 weeks down the road, we've already paid this person 2 weeks of it. So I have to,
So sometimes you don't get the full 75%?
right, but I've already put it out as like $6,800. So what happens is they'll give me a denial and they'll say benefits minus 75% minus denials.
Ed, do you have something to add to that?
Yeah, this money is distributed through the cherry sheet every year, so
Right.
the
Yes.
numbers that we received this year are for actual claims that were
From
incurred
last
a
year.
year ago.
Right.
Now, is there legislation out there sitting around to swap it so that the state gives us the money, or the federal government gives the state the money before we expend it?
There's current legislation that is being proposed that would fund communities at 100%. I don't know of any legislation that would accelerate that reimbursement on a quicker cycle than what we're currently observing right now.
Okay.
This Chapter 115 assistance, Massachusetts is the only state that has veteran service officers in every town. In all the United States, we're the only ones, and we're the only ones that pay out this kind of benefit to the veterans. So we lead the way on that. Unfortunately, we lead the way and the towns go right with us. And I think it's a wonderful thing. And the cycle just continues. Hopefully, it goes down instead of up. So, and, and I know, every time budget comes up, I tell Ed, add another 20 grand or something. We just,
So, Eddie, you think we could effectively be looking at another 15,000 easily for a total of 30,000 out of reserve? What do we have in the reserve right now?
We have a healthy balance in the reserve. I didn't bring a status report with me. I think we had some minor transfers out of the $150,000 reserve. My guess is we have a balance of roughly $140,000. What I do want to share as a result with the committee, as a result of Larry's comments, we also looked at FY14's recommendation as well. And when the recommendation was made, we were hopeful maybe that the level of activity would come down. But quite honestly, since we made the recommendation, it's gone up. So the recommendation at 14 at present day value of claims is going to be shot by $30,000 as well. So I think that's something we need to consider, maybe if we have some additional funds, making a correction to that line item and revisit in the fall. We may have to bump that up again. Certainly, we don't know from month to month what our claims activity is going to be, so it's tough to gauge on an annual basis. I think Larry indicated 2 claims may fall off, and it may drop down
3,
significantly.
maybe. Yeah, but
And that could change things, so we may want to bump that up a little bit if we have the ability to do that before the annual town meeting, I'd like you to keep that in mind. But certainly, we know we're gonna have to revisit that probably in the fall. It's gonna be a definite.
Yeah, and the monies would change based on the VA ratings. If the VA gives my person that's getting $12.45 a month from us, if he gives my person, they give my person 100% disability, he will completely disappear. He'll collect over $2,800 to $3,000 a month from the VA, which overqualifies him for relief. But if they only give him 40% or 50%, okay, that would be like $1,000 a month or $1,280 a month. He would still remain on the payroll for a couple $100, but it would go down significantly because we take in all income. It's all contributed. The hard part is if they're unemployed, unemployment benefits run out, and they just stopped extending the second tier unemployment benefits. Commonwealth is going there. I work for the Commonwealth too, so if the veteran's unemployment benefits run out, he has zero income. When you do that, you reevaluate it, up goes the Chapter 115, and that's what this is. The Chapter 115 assistance, that goes up with no income. So,
Thank you, thanks. I got lots of information. Appreciate it.
So, it's a convoluted process. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a great thing that we're doing, you're doing, Larry, on that, and obviously we are required to support this, whether we budget initially adequately or not. I guess it's one of the few good reasons why we go back to the budget in the fall if we have to. Not to get ahead, but I noticed we've actually bumped that up by about $5,000. Anyways, from supposedly the department request. I'm not too sure that was actually.
in January? Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But that's getting ahead. That's a conversation for about 1 minute from now on the budget,
Oh, okay.
okay? Any other questions on this? We need to vote on the transfer, Larry.
Okay.
That's all.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So voted. Larry, thanks for that information on it. And if you could stay up here, we'll address your budget. Before us, we have the budget, fiscal 14 budget request for veteran services. The veterans' total requested is $63,469, an 8.85% over fiscal 13 appropriation of just over $58,000. As I alluded to, we've actually already upped this budget somewhat from the preliminary January 1st go-around on it, which was $5,000 less. I'm going to open this up to questions. Larry, unless you had any comments first, actually, I apologize. I've been having department heads throw some comments in if they
Oh,
want
that's
to.
fine.
I know we get a little free-flowing conversation here.
Learning process for me too,
Yep.
so.
Here we go. So any questions on this, Jim?
Through the chair, I think that Ed's answered most of the questions that I had. I just see the trend going up with more troops coming home, and that this may be liability or a department that we have to increase over time. I don't think 5,000 is going to really cover it, but I know it's not a precise number and it fluctuates all over the place, but I just see that we're going to be.
We're very fortunate in our OAF, OEF, which is Afghanistan and Iraq returnees, that they're not higher. We're very fortunate in that. The aged widows, the Vietnam vets, that's pretty much the target group. That's where we're getting some of the, plus once you hit Social Security, everything changes, and, you know, the hard part is the younger people versus the older people.
I agree with the fact that as the closer we get to town meeting, we're going to have to take a look at it, if there's money available, and, you know, subsequently at the town meeting in the fall.
Yeah, and just to you, Larry, anyways, we do reserve the right to reopen this, so if there was some new information that came along in the next 3 or 4 weeks on this, we've reopened budgets and adjusted where we thought was appropriate, if we knew we had the resources to do it. Once again, we stand behind this budget anyways, so whether it gets adjusted one more time in April or fall town meeting, those needs are going to be met by the town, and that's something that we have to do. Any other questions, comments on this? We've got a budget in front of us for the Veteran Services, $63,496. Do I have a motion?
Motion?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? So voted. Larry, good to see you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Our next budgets will be the town clerk and elections. Our town clerk's here. Ellen, nice to see you.
Good evening.
We usually see you on swearing someone in or swearing someone off or something like that.
Our election results.
There we go, especially election results. Okay, the town clerk budget. The proposed 2014 budget is $151,399, a 1.32% increase over fiscal 13. Ellen, if you want to give us an overview, some comments on this budget?
Well, the, most of the increase is staff. You know, I have contractual obligations for staff members that have to be met, and that is the bulk of my increase. I did have request an increase in the travel, conference, and education to send the new assistant town clerk to the summer school, and that was reduced by half of the amount required. We've requested a partial scholarship to cover half of the cost. So that's why you'll see that the travel conference was reduced by actually about $425.
Okay.
And unless you have any other questions on that
I'll
one.
open that up. Any questions? Pretty straightforward budget, and thank you for that, by the way.
Okay.
Do we have a motion on this?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So voted. That's the town clerk. And the elections budget, we actually have one election in the fiscal year 2014. I don't ever remember that happening. Is that
It happens about once every 4 years.
really?
However, we have two special elections in the current fiscal year.
Right?
April 30th is the primary, and June 25th is the special general election. And I'm not sure exactly how that's going to all play out, because I have not heard that the legislature has voted to cover the cost of those two special elections. The auditor has determined that it is a local mandate and should be covered. But I don't know yet if it will be. And obviously, I don't have enough money in my budget to cover those. I have enough money left to cover the May town election. And I estimated that the cost to cover, or the cost of those two special elections would be about $12,000
In total?
in total, about $6,000 each. The bulk of that is poll worker pay, because the state supplies us with ballots and coding for the Automac, which is very expensive, although I do have to pay for the memory cards for the Automark.
So you
I may
you
be
suggesting
back.
that we, keep our head in the sand on that and just stay focused on the
Well, the
14
Mass Town
budget, right?
Clerks Association is lobbying. We have a lobbyist working
Okay.
to get that reimbursement. And the auditor is obviously working on our side, since they are supposed to fund local mandates.
Okay?
Okay, so
We'll
just
see
to
where
give
that-
you a
we'll see
heads
where
up
that
on
goes.
that. It's coming quick.
The election budget for fiscal 14 is $14,226, an $8,100 or 36.28% reduction from the, shall we say, multiple elections
There were
that
3
could,
elections.
should, and may be paid for in fiscal 13. Do you have any questions or comments on this? Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So voted. Ellen, thank you. Nice to see you.
I'll be in touch.
All righty. You know where to find us. Okay, our next budget is actually within the Department of Development and Inspectional Services. Several divisions here. Adam's ready to roll, therefore we are. And by the way, I received a voicemail that the wind turbine survey results, something is available and online? Or is that something that can be sent to me? It was a garbled message from Mr. Platukis.
If you want to stop by the office, I can stick it on a thumb drive or a CD for you. It's a 9.5, almost 10 meg file, so we can't email it out.
All right, he went old school on me and said it was 55 pages. If I heard correctly,
It's
I don't know
actually
what
quite
that
a bit
means.
more now.
Okay.
He had the original draft, and we've gotten a final draft.
Okay.
I'll start off by saying you're my favorite committee to come and see because you guys have all the money.
Sucking up won't help.
It's worth a try, though.
You buttering us up.
Keep swinging there, pal, keep swinging.
Nice try, though.
Absolutely.
So, are we going to do these by division, or would you like to do them holistically?
Let's start with the second choice,
Okay.
however you want to describe that, and then we'll roll back into the individual.
You have it by division, so it'll be easy to drill down.
Yeah.
So, what you see before you is a budget that reflects a growing need amongst the Development and Inspectional Services Department. As you know, last fiscal year, yourselves in town meeting were generous enough to give us 2 half-time positions. One filled out the health inspector position and made it full-time, and one added a second building inspector to assist our current building commissioner. We come back tonight hoping for a half of a half-time person. That would be a half-time position that would begin in January, and that would be an assistant town planner / economic development planner. And that would be someone to assist me in the myriad duties that I now possess. Being that I accepted the role of director for the department in October, I have found that my time is greatly reduced, and my ability to focus on planning is somewhat also reduced. So this person would be able to take some of that off my plate and also be able to really sort of focus in the economic development activities that the town manager is trying to really foster. The hope and general goal would be that that person would increase business retention and attraction, thus increasing new growth, thus theoretically producing additional receipts. There are some other minor increases in there. The Board of Health has a few increases for the public health nurse that is everything except for a state mandate. There's some compliance checks and some cleanup money that's in there. And there's some travel increases based on deficiencies that we've identified. We haven't quite run out of our travel budget yet, but we've also had access to a town vehicle, which has helped. And adding, hopefully in the next 3 weeks, a fourth inspector that's out on the road is going to substantially put a dent into those travel funds.
Anything else?
Now it's on to you folks.
Okay, no, that's fine. I think this is a good, maybe mile up in the air view down on where you think things are going, where we as a town would like them to go. I know you work very well in conjunction with town management. I'm going to open it up to questions, and this could be on any one of the division budgets. If anyone has. Kim?
Under public health, what is nuisance remediation?
Yes. Nuisance remediation, that line item is for if we have to clean up or make amends to somebody's property, if they are ordered to remove the 8 bags of trash that the tenant left in the front yard when they moved out because they were kicked out, and the owner lives in Texas and doesn't answer our call, doesn't pick up the certified mail, it would allow us to incur the cost of doing that. Any cost we incur is placed as a lien against the property. So it's money that will come back to us. The question is a matter of when the money comes back to us, because if the owner retains the property in their name, we don't necessarily have the ability to exercise that lien until such time that they go to pass sale. So the idea is that this is sort of, I don't want to call it a pilot program, but I will. The public health director is looking to, at some point in the future, seed a revolving account that would do similar things and may also allow for the demolition and removal of dangerous buildings that are uninhabitable and may cause public health risks.
Kim, anything else for the moment on that, Jim?
Just a follow-up to the last question. Has there been instances in the past where we've had to outlay money?
There has. I'm not going to speak to specific instances because I don't want to misspeak, but I do know that this is a program that the public health director has been pushing to try and seed for half a dozen years now. I know that in my time here, he's had to expend money by court order in certain instances because the town has ordered people to do things. We've gone back and said, filed a, I'm losing the word, contempt of court case. And the court has said, that's great, we find them in contempt, now go fix it, because you've identified it as a public health risk.
Have we ever recouped any of the money?
I can check on that. I have to believe that the lien was placed. I don't know that there's ever been a transfer that recouped those funds.
Yeah, I would see that would be a very hard road to try and recoup some of the money. The other question I had was contracted services that we've had over the years. What was that? Was that like professional services, or was that used for inspectional help?
That was a payment to the Auburn District nurses.
Okay.
And it was essentially a gift or a grant, and there were times that they did provide some public health clinics, not necessarily health clinics, but more informational. They might have done health visits to see if people were doing okay, elderly people. My understanding is that there is a large amount of flux in that organization right now, and with the full-time health inspector, some of those things are being covered under her position, and she's doing some of that work.
Because I see that zeroed out as far as the recommendation of the town manager.
Correct.
And then I see above, there's a public health nurse, and there is no value under it, so.
The public health nurse is, now see, there's two. There's the public health nurse, which was at one point, I believe, an employee of the town.
Okay.
And then there is nurse service.
Yep.
And the person who is the nurse service, functions as our public health nurse. She works between 4 and 6 hours a week, and that's why you see a slight increase. Her previous budget was for, I believe, 2 to 3 hours per week. She provides health clinic services, all of the illnesses that get reported she has to deal with. So what we're looking at is over the next 5 years, increasing the cost in that to reflect the amount of work that she's actually being required to put in on a weekly basis.
Okay. I think that's it for, just looking through the others. That's it for now.
Yeah.
Yeah, question, I think I remember that Andy Pelletier had made sure to set up a revolving account to cover the cost. Was that for certain medical things? Was that just for the immunizations?
Yes, there is a revolving account for the flu, and that covers all flu-related expenses. I believe they have a cap of $7,500 with which to expend each year. That covers all clinic expenses if they need to rent equipment. We, this year, purchased a new portable copier scanner to photocopy people's health insurance cards so that we can get reimbursed. And that also covers some nursing assistance at those clinics.
Okay, thank you.
I guess that leaves me. Actually, just one quick question, and I know I'm fairly new to this process here. You have a comment on the first page here, line 25 expense offset by revenue, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, that line 25 reference is probably more confusing since you're not looking at it as an Excel sheet on a screen. But
And I can't count to 25 anyways.
the very final line item, compliance checks, is a new item in the budget this year. And as members of the, I believe it's the Worcester County or Greater Worcester Area Tobacco Control Coalition, we receive one tobacco compliance check annually. And the last one conducted in the town of Auburn, 5 establishments failed. So they sold tobacco to an underage agent. Those compliance checks result in ticket fines to the establishments. So this is to provide quarterly compliance checks. The one that we would get for free, we would then pay for 3 others. And the offset is, unfortunately, we're making the inference that since we had a failure rate of 5 this year, it's potential that we would have a failure rate of 5 at some point next year. And that would be it would end up being a revenue positive, but it's not we're not looking at it as a revenue generating, we're just looking at it as the potential to recoup our costs. Excuse me.
Okay. No, actually, I was hoping it was on $1 million account versus $300.
Yeah,
That's
I wish
kind
I
of
could
the-
do that for you.
That's
but
the way
it's-
that goes, you know.
Do anything in
Can I assume we're now up to date with the formula calculation for the Central Mass Regional Planning Commission?
That we
That's
are.
straightened out now? I know
Yes.
that was,
It was a long and interesting discussion, but yes, the 3,883.15 is for the 13. That's the actual, and then the 3,981 is the actual estimate that they've forwarded us for 14.
okay. No, that's good. And I actually only have one more question. This would be under Conservation Commission. We've put in for both 14, we had it in there for 13 dues, conferences, and education.
Correct.
Not a large item on there. Are these accounts expected to be used or not used? I know this has been a somewhat dormant budget, not that they're a dormant commission, it's just from a budget perspective.
It does get used. The dues conferences line item is for the commission's annual cost to belong to the Mass Association of Conservation Commissions. They are a 501c3 quasi-public group. They provide hotline support and multiple training opportunities at discounted cost to members. And that $400 covers the commission members and myself in that membership. The $900 dues would theoretically cover everybody going to the MACC conference, all the members of the Conservation Commission. I do know that at least 4 members attended this year, along with myself. So what we're trying to do is provide the funds for those who do wish to attend and not look to scrape them together, because the conference is in March. I guess it was the end of February this year. Oh, no, it's the first weekend in March. So trying to come in at the end of the year and scrape together, $800 or $900 might not always be the most efficient thing. So that budget has been expended actually quite a bit this year. I did take some additional conservation classes that we did pay for out of that.
Okay. And honestly, I didn't take the time to take a look through our actual usage this year, so that's on me. Last is a comment, question, or strategy regarding combining animal inspector and dog officer. I know that hasn't been combined. Is there a structural or a bookkeeping reason why those haven't been combined? It seemed natural that they would be.
They haven't been combined because the town is still assessing the best way to move forward with the position of dog officer, animal control officer, whatever form we might name it. And currently, there are two people, who hold the positions. We have an animal inspector and we have a dog officer. So keeping them, they were always kept separate because the animal inspector is the person who goes and inspects barns and livestock and all that kind of fun stuff. And they have to qualify for the state under a certain statute. And they keep what's called the barn book. It gets sent to them. They're the only people who see it. They're the only people who fill it out, and they send it back to the state. And the dog officer, the quick and dirty of it is they chase dogs.
Sure.
They go
So
they go
it's-
and pick them up, and they maintain the kennel and
Different responsibility.
correct, and they do ticketing. Ultimately, the idea would be to combine them, but because we have two people doing them, there's never been a combination.
Okay, no, that's a good answer. That's a fair answer. Any other questions or comments, Jim?
Yeah, another question. Through the chair, I know when we talked about this last year, about adding the inspector, building inspector, health inspector, I don't know the exact figure, but it was somewhere between like 30 and 40% inspection rate.
Oh, for the health inspector?
Correct, and I'm just trying to find out where that percentage is right now, since we've added the position.
It's 100%. No. The state looks, the state wants you to be at
That was
100%.
easy.
The state wants you to be at 100%. They consider quality compliance in the 80% range. I didn't get a chance to speak to the health inspector today. I do know that she has been out quite a bit I would say that if we're not at 80%, we're in the 65 to 75 range. There has been substantial compliance. She has been focusing specifically on getting our restaurants and other food inspections up to date. And I know that she has spent a lot of time educating the establishments on what she expects from them and what documentation they require.
Now, I know on the building inspection part, there was a lot of concern about liability, where the town wasn't performing all the inspections that they should be for buildings and establishments, and I was just kind of curious if we've stepped that up since we've added that.
We have to a degree.
Position.
We haven't actually filled the assistant inspector's position, the local inspector. Next week are final interviews for the two leading candidates. So we're expecting that sometime in early to mid-April we will have them here. The bulk of their duties will be to perform what's known as the 110 inspections. Those are places of assembly. So hotels, restaurants, all of the places that people want to go that may have a need for the ability to have safe egress.
Okay, and my last question is, under the dog officer, just to explain the travel. I mean, I know that we're in a deficit right now with the
Yes, we
travel,
are.
and I don't know what that it would actually extrapolate out to, but is it, is 6,000 enough, not enough, or?
I believe it's enough. I see the dog officer's payroll, and her monthly travel at this point is anywhere from $300 to $700 a month. So looking at it, I average it out to about $500 a month over a 12-month period, and that's where the 6,000 came from.
I know you talk about possibility of CIPing a vehicle. I thought there was talk about that sometime last year about.
Oh, I've been talking about that for a long time.
Thought they had identified a vehicle that might be available.
We have identified a vehicle.
Okay.
And unfortunately or fortunately, it's being shared between inspectional services and the assessing division of finance. So 3 days a week, my building inspector uses it, and 2 days a week, the assistant assessor uses it. So we've cut some travel costs from both departments in that. Because we're now a green community, we don't have the ability to transfer old vehicles between departments because they don't meet the fuel efficiency standards that we've pledged to abide. So any new vehicle, we would have to then purchase a new vehicle that falls into that. Now, these fuel efficiency standards aren't, massive. They're the standard EPA rated. If you buy a small sedan, I believe it's in the 29 to 33 miles per gallon on average. So it's not like we have to go out and buy a Chevy Volt and spend 40 grand to have an electric car that we plug into the building at the end of the day. But taking an old Cruiser or an old DPW truck isn't going to cut it because, those are getting, 12 to 18 miles a gallon if we're lucky.
And one last question, and maybe Ed could answer this. I know there was a lot of talk about regionalization as far as these positions are concerned. Did this just totally fall apart? Were other communities interested or never really got started?
No, it was well underway, quite honestly. One of the communities that pledged to move forward has since backed off, so that makes it problematic. So we're still exploring options. Certainly, I think that's the way we would like to approach this, but without another player to join up with, then it makes it, very difficult to do.
Or
So,
he needs a dance partner?
yeah, yeah.
And especially for something like a dog officer where there has to be some proximity. It'd be very difficult for us to grab Spencer and Charlton and say, let's share someone, because response time to those three communities is going to be abysmal for everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Okay, we have before us, oh, you have a question?
Yes, 2 questions. All right, hi, thank you. I have 2 questions. First is to the dog officer line, and can you address the note there that you want to, there should be an establishment of a revolving fund for kennel maintenance?
That is a general statement. There are costs associated with the kennel. I believe that a revolving fund would allow us to look at taking some fines and some housing costs at the kennel and put them back into the kennel, as opposed to the general fund where they just become a revenue line. I think that it's something the town should consider. I hesitate to think it's something we should do this year with the position of animal inspector and dog officer up in the air. I think that that's something that whomever has that position should be instrumental in identifying, creating, and working through. So I don't want to rush into it, and in my desire to save that money and get it back into the town, create something that's unworkable and have to go through the process again to amend it.
Okay. Well, when you say save it and bring it into the town, isn't that where it's going now anyway?
It is, but it goes to the general fund. And the general fund is sort of a black hole of dollars, and it's very sort of unclear where some of all, and I know it's very clear to Ed and others, but it seems as if money goes in and it's not necessarily allocated in directly back to that same thing. And I don't say that as a slight on the way that we handle our money. That's just a general government thing.
All right, I understand, thank you. My next question is in the building inspections area. I see your notes about, or the notes about travel and education. Can you just talk about that? Because those are some big increases.
Correct. The previous education budget was nil, so anything is going to be a large increase. There is a conference annually out in Amherst or Springfield, and it's all the building officials in Massachusetts. So this would fund both of our inspectors attending that, and they're required in the certification in their certifications to keep up with continuing education. This conference covers their entire continuing education. We included a small amount additional for other education. We are going to become a Stretch Energy Code community as of 1 July this year. So there will be some training that will be needed for that. That will come at a cost. There's always changes in building techniques and codes, and we want to be sure that both of our inspectors are able to keep up with those. And the travel increase reflects the taking on of the second inspector. We've found that having Mr. Antanavica this year, even with the vehicle, he's putting on and recording miles that the previous inspector maybe was putting on, maybe wasn't recording. So we have an actual tally of what the effect of the day-to-day travel throughout town is, and this number reflects that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Okay, we have before us for the Department of Development and Inspectional Services, including 6 divisions within that, a recommended 2014 budget of $411,910. That's a 3.09% increase over fiscal 13. Have a motion.
Approve?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you very much.
So voted. Adam, thank you. Nice to see you.
Guys, have a good night.
Okay. Moving right along, our next budget is the Finance Department. We've got our CFO here, and this includes the Accountant, Assessor, and Treasurer Collector divisions. Ed, seems to me, number one, that you're not a dog lover, according to Adam, but we'll leave that alone. He left. Hopefully we're on TV. Anyways, can you come before us up to the microphone there, and just give us a heads up on what your budgets are trying to do this year for us?
Most certainly. First of all, in total, I know it seems kind of large, but we're recommending a 6.15% increase, or an overall $32,185, and 74 cents over current year appropriation. The bulk of that is attributable to some adjustments that were made to our chief assessor and to our treasurer collector. As you're well aware, a salary survey was done for our division heads, actually all bylaw employees, and their level of compensation was well below. They were bottom on the survey. So the town manager made a recommendation to bring those in line, to bring it, it's actually under mid-range. And I do want to thank the work and effort that is put forth every day by our chief assessor, Cindy Cosgrove, and our treasurer collector, Terry Lolax. And they would tell you that it wouldn't be possible without a great team that we have in place. So I want to give credit to all the workers as well, because they're busting their humps every day. They're really working hard, and it's showing. Evident by the fact that we are bringing in new growth in the assessor's office to a average of $629,000 per year. That's a direct result of our field assessor hitting the bricks every day, getting out there, capturing that value, coordinating activities through technological advancements, through our GIS system and our Munis software that allows for more accountability on our permitting. Permits are flowing down through the assessor's office and being captured immediately. There were some deficiencies and flaws that we addressed most recently, and that quite honestly, is a result of the efforts that are put forth by the entire team. Also in the assessor's office, I can tell you that the level of appellate tax board cases has diminished as a result of that accurate field work. Those numbers more accurately represent a value of, assessed value of property and structures, which are leading to less abatements and exemptions, therefore leading to less appellate tax board hearings and cases.
Ed, can I interrupt just on that?
Yeah.
It's a very specific question. Our appellate cases budget line is new for fiscal 13. Obviously, we've been dealing with those forever. Where's that captured in historical context, prior years?
Well, before that was combined in with the update reval. The reval had a direct correlation with the appellate tax board cases.
Okay, thank you. Sorry to interrupt you, I just,
So we
I knew it was
decided
somewhere.
we decided to keep that separate for tracking purposes.
thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, the bulk of this increase is attributable, like I said, to those salary adjustments, and I'm trying to hit on some other key points. I can tell you that the utilization of our new hire, I don't want to say new, she's been on board for a year, has really paid dividends because we're able to move that individual throughout the Department of Finance when needed. So Pat Messina was hired, and she spends 50% of the time in my office normally, and 50% of the rest of the day in the treasurer and collector's office. If she's needed in the assessor's office, we will move her there. She's actually worked in the clerk's office as well, in time of need. So this is the direction we would like to move going forward as well. We'd like to be able to utilize personnel throughout the entire department and not specifically to the division. That basically captures the adjustments. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have at this time.
I'll open that up. Kim?
Eddie, under the treasurer collector budget, the clerical line for that one has increased significantly more than it looks like the other divisions. Is that because there's an additional position, or
I'm sorry, under which line item?
the clerical line? It went from 124 to 136?
Under treasurer.
Treasurer.
Oh, okay. Well, due to the reorg, remember, the treasurer went to that line item. So she went from treasurer to assistant treasurer. So she was at the high end of the scale.
Okay.
So there was a, that's part of that difference right there.
But wasn't that effective last July?
Let me just take a look at the roster. No, I think there was an adjustment made. Remember, the FY13 appropriation reflects only that was made at town meeting and not any transfers during the year. So there would have been a transfer during the year, but I do not have,
So it's not an additional position?
No,
or a
no, no,
higher
no.
position? Because that's kind of what it looks like without,
it's not additional position.
okay. All right, thank you.
Good question. Good question. Anything else, Kim?
Nope, that's it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Mike, you? Good? Good. Jim?
Through the chair, Ed, and I do apologize, I did miss the meeting where you talked about overall budget picture and did your presentation. This indirectly has to do with a couple of the departments we're talking about right now, and And I know we've talked before about the trash fees. There was indirect costs to the accounting, treasurer, assessor's office. Historically, we haven't covered those costs. It's always been the trash fees went to solid waste. So if there is an increase in the trash fees, then there is going to be excess revenue. I don't want to call it excess revenue, but it's revenue that was never there before. Is that going to fund some of these departments, or are we going to see that as an excess? Because
No,
we're fully funding accounting, treasurer, and assessor,
Right.
and we always have. But now there's going to be an influx of revenue coming in from the fees.
Right. The recommended budget assumes a level of increase for trash pickup and disposal. So it works it into a revised fee, a blended fee up around 20%. And I provided an analysis as part of your packet
What I
that's
was
in
looking
there.
at, yeah.
That analysis will show that before, the fee was designed only to capture direct costs related to trash collection and disposal of trash. When a fee is to be determined, it's not only supposed to capture your direct costs, it's supposed to capture your indirect costs as well. So there are support costs that are driving that fee as well. And that cost, part of that cost is within the Department of Finance. Those bills have to be created, those bills have to be mailed, those bills have to be collected. There's time to process those, there's leaning of those unpaid fees, so on and so forth. So all of that is captured in that analysis.
But those have always been paid for, and those will continue to be paid through the general fund, pretty
Yes.
much.
Yes.
It's not like we're gonna have an offset from trash fees to offset the individual accountant, treasurer, assessor, legal, and all of that. So I guess, was there a built-in revenue increase
Yes.
based on an increase in the trash fees?
If you look at the schedule of local receipts as part of the beginning of your packet, you're going to see the trash fee going up from roughly $950,000 per year and increased by 200 to like 1,150, $1,150,000.
Okay, I know that vote hasn't, well, I know it's gonna be coming to the Solid Waste Committee. I don't support it, but that's something that will be talked about in that committee. But I was just wondering if those numbers had already been worked into this budget.
Yes.
Okay, so an increase is already in the budget.
Yes.
Now, what happens if that fee is not?
So if that fee, for whatever reason, is not approved,
We're in a
then we have a
deficit.
$200,000 hole that
Deficit.
we would have to address.
Okay, that's really what I was getting at. Thanks.
Okay.
Let me just say one other thing. We do this annually for sewer fee as well, because we have the sewer activity as an enterprise fund. So part of your annual submission to the Department of Revenue, you have to capture all those indirect costs as a way to determine what fee you're going to set. So if there is a fee that is not covered 100% by the revenue coming in, then the general fund would have to subsidize a portion of that operation. So in this case for trash, if we truly look at it as a standalone enterprise, if the fee is not covering, and for years it wasn't, the general fund was actually subsidizing a portion of that.
And really, the only reason I bring it up tonight is I would have asked this question the night we had that. I know we had sewer in here the other day, and they're talking about it could double over the next couple of years due to Upper Blackstone, and now we're talking to trash, to sewer, and we're also going to the public for a middle school, and I just thought that a little bit too much in 1 year.
I can tell you, we presented something, and we talked about this before the Solid Waste Committee before.
Yeah.
And I think it was at a time when it went before the Board of Selectmen in FY '12, and the analysis showed that the general fund was subsidizing that by $148,000.
Yeah, I do.
At that point in time.
Just historically, we haven't really looked at the indirect. I know that we they were in the background, but we never really looked at the indirect costs in looking at the fee. It was always just based on, let's cover disposal and collection, and let's get that covered, and
And there are other options, and maybe the solid waste committee would want to consider that. I mean,
Sure.
we could get out of the business and,
no, that's always, it's always a possibility, I guess.
I mean, Ed, is there an estimate of incremental cost as a result of your department having to pick up that work?
well, certainly, the volume has remained pretty constant. The rising cost is in the area of wheel abrader, which they're allowed, we have a 20-year contract, and those costs have been going up every year. So they're allowed, and it's capped, they're allowed to increase that contractually by no more than 3% annually. So that cost is rising, and the cost of collection is rising annually. So that's why that fee should be looked at every year, because those costs are rising, and that fee has remained the same since 2004. So over 8 years, that rate continues to increase, and if you keep the fee as is, then obviously there's going to be a subsidy from the general fund because we're not keeping pace with the rising cost. I can tell you, based upon the current rate that the individuals are paying for that service, it's well below any other community in central Massachusetts.
What's the monthly rate?
I can tell you the annual rate is $196 for the large toters, and it's billed twice a year. And the small, I think, is $156,
Yes.
$156
Yeah.
for a smaller toter. I can tell you, private trash hauling will run you, for that same bin, $400 per year.
So I guess the other strategy in this case is we say, okay, we don't fully fund this via fees, and we only, we use some general funds to support this, which we're doing anyways on that. So that would be the other way to go on that. I guess the town is providing a service.
I can tell you the revenue side of what has been presented to you and recommended. Just keep in mind that we reduced cherry sheet revenue by 2%. That 2% is roughly $200,000. Now we're hearing that the governor's proposal may have some support in the House, not to the extent that he's proposed, but certainly I think there's a consideration for some type of tax increase. That is going to totally offset that 2% reduction. Even if we remain level, that's a $200,000 increase on the revenue side. And our Chapter 70 distribution under the governors is about $880,000 increase. So that's not part of what you're looking at. So that's why we're asking the Solid Waste Committee, take a look at it. Does it make sense?
I guess my biggest issue about it is if we did privatize it and everybody went out on their own, would we actually see $200,000 get kicked back into the general fund? And I don't see that happening. If you didn't have to collect fees, you should basically have $200,000 that's not being used by all of these indirect costs.
There would be a net gain because our current revenue is not covering our expense. So if you eliminate the expense and you eliminate the revenue, it's going to be a plus on the general fund side.
Your point being is, you don't see that expense being eliminated,
No.
very generically. Which is certainly getting ahead of it, but
Yeah, I
certainly
know.
for
It's
discussion.
just, the only reason I bring it up is because I wasn't at that meeting, and I certainly would have brought that up that night, but since we were talking about some of the key departments as far as the offsets are, the indirect costs, I just wanted to bring that up.
So we're glad you're here tonight. That's good. That's good.
Maybe not.
We have any other questions on these divisions within the Finance Department? Okay, we have before us a recommended 2014 budget for the Finance Department of $555,596, a 6.15% increase of the fiscal 13 appropriation. Do I have a recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So voted. Ed, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
That finishes our budgets for this evening that we've planned to review. Sharon, we had a discussion about maybe moving around some budgets for next week. I believe we still should be able to have information technology and where's emergency management fall under now? Was that something that should be in
It's kind of
tandem?
a separate department, but Roger Bellhuma would be coming.
Okay, so why don't we keep that, if that works? And what departments do you recommend we add? Sharon, if we can bring those in?
I could see if the library director is available
Okay,
and the senior center.
library,
What is our deadline anyway?
senior center. What do we get? Is the 10th our deadline?
Do you have your timeline with you? No.
Must have missed that page.
Yeah, no. Is it in our book this year? No, it's not in our book.
It was at the budget kickoff meeting. Usually the 10th is our last.
Yeah, right around the 10th. Okay. We do have some time. Town manager? That's something that we could
Maybe
look
general
at.
services?
Okay. Yeah, so if we can do that. Kim, are there any other budgets that you would like to hold? We've got some
Those two.
flexibility, so
Yeah,
just the
no,
two we had
those are
talked
the only
about?
two that I,
Okay, yeah, I have no
'Cause
problem with that.
next week's the only week I have a
Sure.
problem, and schools is the
It'd be the
week
following.
after.
That'd be the
right.
following week, right.
We do Bay Path yet?
You know, Bay Path's interesting. I don't even think we had John in last year, only because it's kind of a dictated budget. That's our pleasure, him coming in. He'll have no problem with that. Did you want them coming in? Or you want to talk about it later?
It's usually pretty clear cut.
Right. So we'll hold off on that, but let's keep that on the front burner and try to do that. Yeah, okay. So if we can load up next week with those other budgets, and we'll defer back on the police and fire for first week in April. Okay, that's great.
Solid waste we could get rid of, that's.
Yeah. I know that's near and dear to your heart.
It is.
Kim?
I'd like to see Bay Path come in and explain why the override we thought we were voting on isn't an override.
Sorry.
Good point. We all have that. I'm just thinking within our budget context, that's not necessarily.
But isn't it part of our budget?
Yeah, you have a good point on that. Yeah, let's make sure we do get him in here. I don't think, I won't schedule him for next week, okay?
No.
How's that?
Thanks.
That's a good point. And I guess, do we have an idea if we can get that question answered anyways without John having to come in? We had some
It's already been
questions,
answered. It's, the question, the first question was an override question. The second question
Right.
was not. So I think Kim's concerns were, and I think a lot of other people thought that the second one was an override as well, just done, the manner in which it was done on a collective basis, not on an individual town basis. So, and it is part of the assessment.
Right.
That $64,000 is rolled in as a component of the total assessment. So in terms of where that assessment is gonna go,
That's
the
the
next 2
problem.
years, I think it does play an important part of at least looking outward.
Right. And how we,
I think we have to prepare
Yeah.
or make a decision as to whether or not we take it to the voters at a later date.
I mean,
Well, some communities have taken it Paxton did. But you know, if it's voted down, we have to assume that an interest obligation through some other revenue source.
Right, I guess my only point is, if we have flexibility in how we fund it, it doesn't sound like we do, then what is John explaining to us? Because we voted on it. If we do have flexibility on doing that, then what does that matter that John comes in anyways? Because we're gonna, if we can do it another way, then that's what we're gonna do. I don't know what John is actually gonna answer to us, except we misunderstood maybe the ballot question.
Well, I think the assessment currently contains a portion of capital currently, so with the new school coming online, what does that mean in terms of future assessments? Is it just normal growth plus, level of debt and interest that we have to assume through the new school? Or can we expect a reduction in some capital that may have been earmarked or provided in a long-term plan that's gonna fall off because they're now building a new school?
Okay. Well, if we have, let's make sure that he's got the right people with him to answer those questions. They're pretty complex anyways. I don't see him being able to just stand up at the podium and talk to these things completely. All right, but yeah, we'll try to get him in.
And I think this assessment too is predicated on a revenue source that he is expecting, or I don't know if it's built on the governor's model, or whether they're going middle of the road, or it's a conservative approach. And if the governor's number does pass, what does it mean in terms of level of assessment? Does it go down?
Okay,
Could be a big difference.
right, which at the end of the day is still out of our control.
Explain the formula to us again.
We're not going there. We're not going there. I'm not taking a whole week for that. That's just not gonna happen. Kim?
Do we have flexibility? I know we don't have flexibility now about the borrowing, the new school. But do we have flexibility with the rest of their budget? What we can vote to support?
Well, certainly, their budget assumes a level of increase, whether it be for contractual considerations or whatever else, and I don't recall what that rate of growth is. Do you have, it gets very complex. There isn't a recommended assessment that they pass along. I think if there's opposition to that, there may be a consideration to go back and try to trim a portion of their operating budget to bring down the assessment. I don't know, because they're working with, is it 10 communities within?
At least
the
10,
system?
yeah. I think for us to do an effective change on it, we've tried over the years, and we really have not been able to. We're truly dictated on that. I guess to paint a pretty picture on it, thank God we're not part of a regional school system. And it's just, compartmentalized to the vocational program. As you can see, there's a bunch of towns having issues. Wachusett, Spencer, East Brookfield, they're all having issues with regional school setups and financing. It's very frustrating, don't get me wrong on that, because
I'm frustrated by the appearance of putting something over on the voters of the communities by leading us to believe that we were voting a 2.5 override, and now it's something that we have to raise every year. It's not a big issue this year, but this is the first time it's hitting, and if we don't raise it now, and we know it's going to be an issue in future years, it's going to impact our ability to fund our general government departments. And it's not for operating expenses, it's for something that we, as citizens, thought we were voting an override.
Yep. Now, once again, we'll get him in to talk to it, and I think in this case, we should make sure he knows really, we're probably not focusing much on his school operating budget. It's other issues related to, as you said, CIP related, but the building, the financing, and that kind of thing on that, just so we can be prepared on that. We certainly don't have the answers. But let's do that on the 10th, only because I don't believe we're going to be able to make any kind of changes in the short term based on whatever he's going to come up with for answers for us on that. So we'll save that for the end. Hopefully that gives him enough time to come in unless he's got a conflict on that. Anything else, Kim?
If you prefer to not have him come in and just, I'd go along with sending a letter saying that have been made aware of it. We're concerned about the future, putting them on notice that we're concerned.
Yeah, I would have no problem. I think from that perspective, I'd rather have him come in, give us maybe some level of comfort, maybe a better level of understanding that we certainly could get out of a letter. But I know he's one for communication, and he never has a problem showing his face here anyways to make sure. I guess from that perspective, I'd rather him
Okay.
come in. Hopefully, he can answer those questions, though, that we probably should get out to him beforehand, so he's prepared for those. Maybe we come up with a letter for him, or just the general topics for him.
Thank you.
Maybe we'll work on something on that in the next couple of weeks. But if we can get him in here, at least scheduled in, that'd be good. Anything else? Okay, so we're meeting next Wednesday, which would be March 20th on, actually, several budgets, as many as we can kind of squeeze in. Great. With that, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So voted. Thank you.